All right, so we've got the Gravedancers with that was directed by Mike Mendez. I feel like at the end of my last review, I said a different title. Did I? Like, I don't know what the hell I said. But anyways, so the Gravedancers. This was an After Dark Horror Fest film from year one, I think, right? Year one, yeah. And of course, I saw all of these. I saw all uh, 32 of them because there was 4 years or more actually because there was the Snoop Dogg's Hood of Horror, there was Captive, there was Frontiers. These were all movies that were pulled. I do own all of those, and they are in my great After Dark Horror Fest collection that I have. And then, of course, they did the After Dark originals after, like Red Clover and Re-Kill, and there was a ton of titles in the After Dark originals after. And there was actually some really good ones from the After Dark originals, Lumberjack Man being my personal favorite. But actually, there's some really cool flicks in that. And yeah, so which sucks because of all I own all of year 1 through 4, but I own zero of the originals, and I don't know why I don't own Lumberjack Man because I need to do that for a Slasher Sunday. Which reminds me, I need to do a Slasher Sunday tomorrow, so I got to figure something out. But man, I would love to get a copy of that. Anyway, all right, so The Gravedancers is a film that I saw back when it came out, and I absolutely hated it. Now, Mike Mendez was a director that I was looking forward to his next picture because I loved The Convent so much. And then recently, Dolph Lundgren's film Don't Kill It, I love. Now, I saw this before Don't Kill It, yeah, but still, Mike Mendez made the Convent, which I was like, man, I fucking love that film. Very Night of the Demons. If you haven't seen it, you're a Night of the Demons fan. It's almost a spiritual kind of remake or sequel to that. So highly recommend that if you're a fan of that film. But this is one that I was like, I did not care for at all. And so when he requested it, I was like, oh shit. All right. I was never expecting to ever watch that movie again. But now I bought all of these for $1, by the way. All the After Dark Horror Fest, every single one of them I have, I got them for $1 a piece, I think. Almost every one of them. During the Hollywood Video closeout, when they went out of business and they were selling up all their stuff for $1, I went to like every location in Arizona to look for all of these. Of course, I got plenty of other things as well. But I got After Dark Horror Fest. I called everyone in Phoenix, and I was just locating, like, okay, which ones do you have? And the guy would be helpful enough, and I'd be like sound frantic enough where he'd be like, all right, I'll help you out, because he probably thought I was gonna come in there and fucking shoot the place up if he didn't comply immediately. So yeah, all right. So the opening is actually really good. I really did like the opening. Like I have a thing for really brutal hanging sequences. I don't know what it is about hangings in movies, but if done right, like in Suspiria or like in The Omen or like in there's another one. Oh, in House on no, The Haunting of Hill House. The House on Haunted Hill. Yeah, The Haunting of Hill House. I can't give that. That's a huge spoiler, but man, that's probably like I talked about the best hanging sequences ever, and I left that one out. And then after the video, I was like, oh man, that's like the coolest hanging sequence ever. But there's something about hanging sequences when done well. Just the weight of the body and the snap of the neck and just the brutality of it. Even though there's no gore per se, I don't know, there's something about it to me. It just seems so fucking brutal. And I just love it. It always hits me really hard when it happens, especially when it kind of comes out of nowhere. And this film's very dark in tone. Aesthetically, like the film is really kind of pale and washed out. And honestly, it's a really ugly looking movie. It works for that opening sequence, but the rest of the movie, like I get the color palette's supposed to be kind of drab, but for me, it just, I don't know. There's no life in the movie, and I get it. That's what they're going for, but it just looks cheap. It looks, I don't know. It doesn't look like a feature film. It looks shitty, and I get it's a lower budget movie and this and that, but I just think that it was an aesthetic choice, and it personally didn't work for me. So yeah, I think the film looks like shit. You got Dominic Purcell. Is that how you say his name? From Prison Break and Legends of Tomorrow, the Arrowverse, and he looks. Is the back of his head like completely flattened here? I guess this is before the dock bands. If for people who have not had kids who have flat heads and had it corrected, you ever see those kids with like the half helmets? They're just like one side white little helmet right there. My daughter Elliot got one of those. They're called dock bands, and you have to have them adjusted. They actually like carve out a little bit more of the helmet, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and their head actually grows into the helmet. Elliot's head was like completely flat on this side, completely flat when she was born, or not when she was born. She was laying in her rocker or whatever. It started to like morph her head and shit, and so we had to have that dock band. My daughter had a hemangioma right here on her face, big one, motherfucker, huge thing. It's gone now, thank God. It took like 6 years for it to grow out. But it was this, it looks like a giant pimple. I mean, seriously, it was like that big, and it was right in the center of her face. We called it her strawberry. And she couldn't get one. She needed one. She got a little flat head, and she needed one, but they couldn't put one on her. And so now she has a flat head, and Elliot doesn't. But Oliver, I swear to God, Oliver's head doesn't feel all that flat. Like, I feel like we got ripped off, but whatever. You want to do everything for your kids to make sure that they are as normal and as possible, so that they feel as best about themselves and have the best opportunities. But his head was like, just from the back, it just looked so flat, and I was like, that guy needed a dock band. There you go. There's a story that you guys hopefully care about. Maybe not. We'll see. But I love my kids, and any chance I get to talk about them, I'm always going to bring it up. All right. So Purcell's character in this is a cheater, essentially, and he just makes out with a chick. I'm not saying it's good, but it's not, it's not that horrible. But they dance on graves, and they read a thing, and I guess the caretaker at the end is setting people up. For what reason, we don't know, which usually is a big turnoff for people, but in some movies they seem to look past it, so I don't understand what the rhyme or reason is in that. When they don't get an explanation of why a killer is doing something, sometimes they love it, like in The Strangers, and they just think it's the greatest thing ever, but then that happens in something like The Open House. They think that's fucking idiotic, and why wasn't it told to us? So I'll never understand why people feel that way sometimes and not other times. I don't get it at all. But anyways, we go to like a year later is after the hanging. Speaking of which, shit, I didn't even think about this. What does that opening have to do with anything? Because it's a year later. I'm guessing that was just somebody else who had that happen to them, and then we're just seeing yet another one of those things. I watched this movie 4 or 5 days ago now, and I didn't even think about the opening. That happens in a lot of movies. You ever think about that? There's a lot of horror flicks that have this real like intense opening, because they always got to start like that, and I feel like 1 out of 5 times I don't even know what that had to do with anything. And I feel like in this, as I said, I'm sure it's very blatantly obvious if I went back and watched it again and be like, oh, she had the note. She had the letter or whatever that I didn't realize was even a thing until the end of this movie. But yeah, I'm sure if I went back and watched, that's what it was. But I never even thought about that person. I never even thought about that person until right now. Now I'm sitting here like a year later. That's not their funeral they're going to. Like, that's, the fuck is this again? Who is that person? All right. So assuming she's also danced on graves, and I guess, yeah, you don't dance on people's graves. You don't piss on them. You don't dance on them. You don't fuck on them. I talked about this in another video. You don't fuck on people's graves. It's just disrespectful. And I don't believe in much of anything. So when I say it, man, it must be wrong. The ghost hunters in this movie are introduced very quickly. And the dialogue between the paranormal guy and the friend that's there, of course I didn't write any names down because that's just typical me. They're like interacting and they're fighting with each other. The guy who brought them in to investigate and whatnot, and they have like their back and forth dialogue. Horrid. absolutely fucking wretched dialogue. Like they're fighting and it's so bad. I was actually like rolling my eyes throughout every time they spoke to each other. I was like, oh Jesus Christ, maybe that could have used a couple rewrites. Maybe that could have been, used a little touch up, because yeah, it just felt so off. You would think that burning footsteps on the ground would elicit a more excited response than they get in this movie. Like for me, that is pretty much irrefutable evidence that would happen right in front of me, knowing that no one set that up. I would be sitting there and we were investigating a paranormal activity, and then fucking burning footsteps started appearing on the ground. Yeah, that'd pretty much be about it for me. I'd be like, all right, I got everything I need. Thank you. Good night. Now, of course, if you recorded that, people would then question and be like, oh, you set this up. This is a hoax, whatever. But at least I would know that there is something else beyond it. Up until the very end of this movie, we have invisible characters, which I always laugh because this reminds me of Cave Dwellers, the Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode, where Ator and Thong are in battle with these invisible, and they're invisible, and then Crow and Tom Servo, I can't remember which one of them, laughs and is like, they couldn't even afford actors. That shit, anytime there's ever anything happening in a movie with an invisible character, unless of course the movie's The Invisible Man, I laugh out loud thinking about they couldn't even afford actors thing. Just make them invisible, throw yourself around, and go all Star Trek where they're like, oh, the ship is moving around. Now, these are pretty elaborate headstones for the undesirables. These are murderers and convicted rapists and whatever, these people that are undesirables of the world. But they still get like $5,000 headstones and proper burials and a like legit graveyard right there. Really? They'd have a tombstone that was fucking 5 feet tall with all this like really intricate inscriptions and this epitaph and everything for an undesirable that didn't have any money and was paid for by the state? Bullshit. They just burn them up, or they'd throw them in a fucking like plywood box and throw them in the backyard. Like, they don't give a backyard of what? I don't know what the hell I was talking about there, but you know what I mean. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, right. That gravestone, they would put this enormous gravestone and then put like one word on it. Like, forget even what it says. It's I don't think I wrote it down, but it just says like, oh, I can't even guess. I don't remember what the hell it says, but it's just like one word, and it's like, why the fuck would you put a 5-foot headstone on an... I'm beating that into the ground, but it makes no sense. So they got to go and rebury them to break the curse, because of course they always can find the direct right answer in the first book that they look at or something. It's so stupid. But of course the girl keeps all the skulls, and no one seems to notice that the skulls are missing, the most obvious bones that you're not going to miss when you're burying something. But I guess they kept them in the bags. I think I would have dumped them out and been like, all right, the leg bone's connected to the hip bone, and just make sure that I had everything. But these guys don't look. They bury them. They think the curse has been... And they bank on they bank on what these people are saying so intently. Now, of course, they don't really have any other choice, but it's just like, at the end of this moon, you guys the curse is 100% broken. Gotta listen to us. And they're like, okay. Now, I'm not, as I said, I get it, but it's like, you're putting a lot of trust into something that they're just guessing at. The dude in this just is driving around in a Hummer H1, which back then those things were outrageous. I think they're even more outrageous now. Aren't they like $120,000 or something insane? But the paranormal investigator, I guess, gets paid the big bucks. The someone in bed laying with you and the arm over him, and then the actual person that you think is in the bed with you walks in the room thing. That's been used so many times. Now this movie's a little older, but it ain't that old. So it was cool the first couple times I saw it, but man, every time I see it now, I'm like, Jesus, come up with a different gag. That is rough. And so Dominic Purcell and then his buddy, they are going to go in this house with the paranormal investigation crew and his wife and everybody and the chick that loses her mind. And they're like, fuck this, I'm out of there. And they are like stern. They're like steadfast on this. They are not changing their minds. And they turn around and fuck this, I'm out of here. I'm done with this shit. And there is the most inane, like, lame ass attempt at getting them to change their mind. They're like, oh, come on, don't go. Like, no, come on, just don't do that. And the guys are just like, fine. And they like turn around and they walk back in. It's not even like, there's not even an attempt at any kind of like dialogue that actually like resonates and is like, oh yeah, I guess that's a good point. Or like, someone points out like, you can't do this because of this, or kind of flips things on them, or, kind of uses some kind of reverse psychology, anything interesting. These guys are just like absolute across the board, stubbornly, absolutely no, I'm not, you're never going to get me to do this. Turn around to leave. And then someone's like, no, like you shouldn't go. And they're like, okay, let's go. It's hilarious. Yeah, thank you. Bless me, right? Okay. And then the relationship drama in this movie is so forced. It is so forced. It's like, oh, you did what? Oh my God, what the hell? Blah, blah, blah. And you're just like, oh God, I don't care about you guys at all. I don't buy your romance. I don't buy your relationship. I don't care about your marriage. I don't care about what he did. I don't care about his interaction. Like, there's nothing going on there. Nothing. There's supposed to be some kind of a little love triangle or something where he's got his feelings over here, but she's loving him, but he's not. Whatever. And I am just so not on board with it. They don't develop it at all. We don't know their relationship at all in this movie. They don't even bother with that. So why do I care when he's cheating, kissing someone else, and then the friend comes at him and says stuff that anyone would be popping the guy in the face like pretty much instantly. But it's like they insert drama for drama's sake, and then no one has like real reactions to anything. And it's super fucking annoying. And so then the wife comes and she confronts the chick who made out with him. And this is gotta be the worst piece of dialogue in the entire film. She's like, are you still in love with Harris? I actually wrote his name down right here. So Dominic Purcell. Are you still living with Harris? And she's like, yes. Literally. And I do mean literally. I said literally and literally. I never know which way I want to say that. Literally is correct, but literally just sounds more like there's more emphasis on it. So I'm not sure why I always say it different ways, but there you go. I guess when I'm more excited, it's literally. So right now, it's literally. So she says, oh, do you love him? Yes. Literally 2 seconds later, literally, she's like, I'm so over him. And they're like, okay. And they like bud up. Bud up? Is that a thing? That's not a thing. But it is now. Bud up. But yeah, they're like buddies now. Are you still in love with him? 2 seconds later. Well, yes. Are you, and then 2 seconds later. I'm so over him. I'm glad we had this talk then. I mean, you've been in love with him for years, but in this 3-second exchange, now you're completely over him. That one actually hurt my fucking brain when I watched it. It's like, huh? What? Look of the ghost. The look of the ghosts in this when they turn, and those crazy faces with the big grins and all that stuff, is awesome. Okay? That's pretty much the best thing I have to say about this movie. So I'm guessing that Peter was about that look of the killers, or the ghosts or whatever. And for that, I gotcha. The look of the killers, or the ghosts, or whatever you want to call them, is creepy, is memorable. I do like it. Only positive thing I have to say about the movie, honestly. The throat slit in this is good. I mean, I guess that's a positive, so there you go. Never mind. I guess I'm already contradicting myself, much like the girl who says she's in love with a guy a second ago and now she's so over him. So, aren't we all freaking hypocritical assholes? I love the. Okay, here's another positive. See, I'm a total asshole. So contradictory there. So the fences that are surrounding the entire complex or the house or whatever, they all fly in. Of course, we don't get to see this because of the budget, but they all fly in and close up against the house so that they can't get out of the house. Like, that's awesome. What a great idea. All the fences in the place just fly close and just smash into the house and lock them in, like cage them in. That's brilliant shit. I love that. So, really, really cool idea there. I have nothing positive to say about this movie. 3 fucking positives in a row. What an asshole. And the Kira, there you go, there's her name, turns demon, looks great. So that, as I said, the killer, the demon looking kids, great stuff. And the demon kid, who's the pyromaniac, runs through the walls and it bursts into flames. Of course, this reminds me of Nightmare on Elm Street 2 when Freddy walks through the fence and it catches on fire. So, little, probably not an homage, but I saw it as one. And I'm not really sure why, what's his name again? I wrote it down earlier. Harris. So Harris helps his wife out onto the roof. Why? Like, it's almost a flat roof that she could just walk out onto, but he's like holding her hands and like letting her down further and further. Why? I don't understand what's happening there. I mean, I was looking at it like, is this just for dramatic tension? I don't, like, just walk out onto the roof. But I guess that kind of reminds me of Halloween 4 when she's helping Jamie out there, but Jamie's like 6 years old, so little different. This is a full-grown woman. And then the whole driving cars through a building when you don't know what's on the other side of it and it all working out, that happens all the time in movies, but whatever. It's a film. The CGI ghost, like the head-chasing ghost, looks horrid. It kind of reminds me of Evil Dead, and there's a reason they didn't show it. Because it's better without, less is more sometimes, and this is one of those examples. Now, the way that they get out of this is they take the heads and they dunk them into a hole in the ground. And then it immediately lifts the curse. So if you just threw it into like an open, like a little open freaking hole in the ground, then that's it. You don't have to bury it. You don't have to cover the head with earth and then do the ritual talk that the guy gave and the thing. Like, they just literally throw the head. Like, what if they would have just thrown it into a little rough patch in the dirt that, has like little crevices and stuff in it? Does that count? Did they have to dig it up with a shovel and like have the intention of putting it in there as a burial? Like, when I watched it, I was like, it's just a little hole in the ground, and they just dunked, like, he just like came up and freaking dunk competition slammed it in there, and I guess that's it. Okay. You didn't have to cover it at all. You didn't have to say any words at all. You just had to throw it in the ground. That seems off, but whatever. Anyway, there you go. Gravedancers in the books. So, yeah, wasn't a fan. So, but, you get the honest opinion, as always. All right, adios. I got to get to work.